the lapis. I love this image, it's so beautiful. It's this opening up to the great self within, the star within, the God trapped in matter. And so at the bottom is the image of the ego, and at the big bright thing in the sky is the image of the self. And so in Jung's psychology, the ego, in Jung's psychology, what we are most essentially is ego and self. We exist on two levels in some strange way. We exist here and now, localized in time and space. We're all at this seminar on time, blah, 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 blah. But there's also this kind of eternal element. Hey mate. There's also this eternal element, and that eternal element to me represents, it represents our potential in the future. It represents something that captures our interest. We're integrating new information, we're seeing new potentials, we're activating new potentials, we're becoming all we could become. And that sense of our potential in the future is ourself and our relationship to ourself. And we know when we're out of integrity with ourself, and we know when we're in integrity with ourself. We know when the ego's aligned with self, and we know when we're off. And that's a sense. And it's a sense of discord and disharmony, or harmony. Like our soul sings, or it doesn't, and we've got a lived sense of that. So here's Christ, similar image, okay? So the material, the ego, manifested in time and space, also represents the eternal divine spark. Buddha, same motif. Different culture, same motif. It's the same dream. The elixir vitae, eternal life, and this is also what the stone was said. This is one of the magical powers of the stone. And the stone was said to be able to transform lead, something that is worthless, something that is base, something that's not that interesting, something that's just a bit like lead. What am I going to do with lead? And then transmute that into gold, into the thing of the highest worth. And so the stone was said to give its bearer power of transmutation. So that's the ability to transform something from a state of worthlessness to a state of value and nobility. A parallel of this transmutation from lead to gold, here is the alienated ego, and this is the meaningless and nihilistic perspective, which I personally know very well. Only a few years ago, I was having a deep existential crisis. What's the point of anything? What's the meaning here? Like, where am I going? So I know how this guy in this image is feeling, and I'm sure we all do. We've all had our moments and our phases of feeling this way. And you know, this is what Nasser Eliade called the profane. There's a book called The Sacred and the Profane by Nasser Eliade, who is a Romanian, I think, historian of religions or something. It's a very, very amazing book. And what he talks about is the profane. Profane means the absence of the sacred, okay? And the sacred is associated with the spirit, the holy, the light, which we've all talked about. And so this, to me, is a profane image, an image of alienation, and an image of nihilism and meaninglessness. And fundamentally what it represents is is an ego that is disoriented. It's not aiming towards something that is sacred. It's off course in some way, and it lacks bearing, essentially. It's kind of like a ship without a compass, afloat on the ocean. And this is the profane mode of existence, and it's something that I'm really aiming to heal, I suppose, or remedy, I suppose, in myself and in others. And I think this is, we're going to come onto it, but this is kind of like the starting point of the alchemical opus, what the alchemists called the blackness. So it's the sense of ultimate disorientation and meaninglessness, and just like, kind of like you go to a place, but it doesn't, it feels arbitrary. That would probably be the best word. It's like, why this, why here, why now, why this? Like, there's no ultimate map around existence and being itself. And so then the profane is transmuted into the sacred. And here is the image of the sacred, the aligned. As I said, the spirit, the ego aligned to the self. The spirit, the ego which knows itself and embodies the spirit in matter. So there's the profane state, disintegrates, disintegrates into the massa confusa of the blackness, the dark night of the soul, and in this blackness the light emerges, and this is known as the lunar awakening, the albedo, the whiteness, which is the awareness of the moon, the awareness of the self, dawning awareness of the self, and it's the awakening of the imagination. And then this subtle essence is then recoagulated into, it's brought back down to earth, it's grounded, it's lived out, the dream is lived out. And so that is, this image of ultimate harmony is the chemical wedding, as the alchemists called it, between Sol and Luna. So we know this idea, right? It's this hidden symbolic thread that runs through our great works of art, which we know and which are moving through the zeitgeist of our time. So here's the Matrix, Neo in his lead state, okay, in the profane state, and Neo in his golden state, where he sees the Matrix, okay? He becomes spirit and can then reintegrate that into the material world and bend the rules. This is Aragorn in his lead state, when he was known as Strider. He was known as Strider, this is from The Lord of the Rings, for anyone who hasn't seen it. This is one of the central heroes of the films, and he was known as Strider because he was denying his true nature. And this is Aragorn in his golden state, reintegrating the spirit. Another interesting motif in this film, this is Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, is that Aragorn actually descends into the underworld. So he descends into the Dark Mountain, where he meets the spirits of his ancestors, and he calls on them for help in redeeming the state of Gondor. And that's actually how they win the battle. So that's another motif here. So the idea of the ancestors living in the Dark Mountain. So let's talk about that for a moment, I suppose. History is alive. History is alive, and I think a part of our role in life is to recognize our history and to recognize the languages, the words of our ancestors, to recognize the spirit of our ancestors, to recognize the traditions and the rituals of our ancestors, and to come home to who we are. And the reason for that, this is a very olden way of thinking. This is the role of the shaman in the archaic societies, even in societies living today. Is the shaman would constellate the axis mundi, the world tree, which sat between the material and the spirit worlds, and the shaman would journey into the spirit world, and the shaman was said to speak to the ancestors, see what they're saying, see what their insights and wisdom they had for our current situation, bring that wisdom back down, and the kings and the leaders and the queens would all listen to this and hopefully heed the word, and then they could live and re-actualize the ancestral dream. And so the integrity of the ancestors, the spirits of, the eternal spirits, is an important motif here as well. And so that's a part of what we're doing today as well, is we're familiarizing ourselves with symbols, images, spirits, which never really die. This is Jung's idea of the archetypes. Jung called the archetypes the eternal images. Okay, so the idea is that they re-manifest themselves in different times and different places. They are dressed up with a different zeitgeist. And the zeitgeist means the spirit of the time. So it's 2019. So whatever time it is, whatever date it is, that's the spirit of the times. And then the material we're looking at here is the spirit of the depths. Okay, the depths of the mountain which Aragorn goes to redeem the ancestral spirit, to reawaken them, win the battle against the hordes of chaos, and then restore the aligned sacred kingdom. This is from Pan's Labyrinth once again. This is Ophelia in her led state, in the profane state. And there she's looking at the spirit of Mercurius, which I showed earlier. So the little thing that flits for her awareness, the thing that, it's like, oh, what's that? What's that? She's looking at that. And here's Ophelia in the redeemed state. So it's a Gnostic myth fundamentally, and there's the king, the queen, and the chair of the living individual, the chair of the hero. As a trinity motif as well, so that's the sun and the moon, and the living individual also, with a mandala, with light shining through. This is Ophelia in her golden state. So Pan's Labyrinth is a great film, which is rich in symbolic imagery. If you're interested in extending and expanding your understanding and awareness of some of this stuff.